This video is sponsored by Win-Win Technology, your ultimate flight sim hardware solution, featuring the Orion hotels, current and future configurations.
Hello valued viewers, I hope you're all doing very well. Today we're doing the buyer's guide / module review for the P-47D Thunderbolt. We're going to split the review up into 7 parts. First, capabilities. We'll look at the weapons, the navigation and other miscellaneous features. Next, we'll look at the visual effects. We'll also quantify this between 1, very bad, and 5, very good. At the end, all of these scores will go onto a spreadsheet which you can find linked in the video description. It will have all of the DCS modules there, all quantified and rated, not just by myself but by the other GR members as well, so you can get a good, clear, unbiased rating system of all the modules as best we can do there. Next, we'll look at the sound effects inside and outside and again quantify it between 1 and 5. Then we'll look at interactivity and detail, how interactive is the cockpit and the systems behind them, between 1 and 5. The flight model, how good, how convincing is the flight model, between 1 and 5. How difficult it is, between 1 and 5, 1 being easy, 5 being very hard, and then finally an overall summary. So let's start with capabilities. Before we get in the cockpit, just to point out, there are 3 sub-versions of the P-47D we have in-game. That is the Dash 30, the Dash 30 Early, and the Dash 40. The main differences are they have slightly different weapons loadouts, and the Dash 40 can have rockets where the other 2 can't. As well as that, slight differences in the cockpits and the weapons deployment system, fully covered in tutorials that we've done already. And welcome to the P-47D-40 cockpit. First things first, yes, it does look a little bit like a P-51. It shares a lot of the technology and the instruments. First, the all-important weaponry. We can have on stations 1 and 5, only available with the Dash 40 variant, rockets, either 3 times 4.5-inch M8 unguided rockets, 3 per wing that is, or 5 per wing HFAR 5-inch unguided rockets. Stations 2 and 4. Bombs, 100 up to 1,000 pound general purpose bomb, low drag. Fuel tanks, 108 gallon paper, or 110 and 150, I'm guessing they are metal. Pods, smoke. And finally the center station, up to 500 pound general purpose bomb, and fuel tanks. Gun ammo, combat mix, ground attack, or no tracers. Liveries, a whole load of standard liveries on the US coalition. Next, navigation and communication. Primary navigation is map, compass, and stopwatch. For that we have our E2B magnetic compass here. Associated we have our directional gyro here and a clock here. Additionally we have a BC1206, this unit here. This is what we call a standard beam approach system. It allows us to approach a runway on the radial a bit like an old-fashioned ILS. Communications is done through this unit here, the SCR522A. It is a typical of the time radio, 4-channel plus bass, with hard-coded presets that are set in the mission editor. Weapons aiming, rockets and guns, we have a gyro and stadiometric gun sight. In fact, we can turn that on. And weapons. Ta-da! And for visual identification, key recognition, lights, external lights here. Next, let's look at the visuals, inside and then outside. First, let's just turn the gamma up a smidgen, as it is a little dark in here. I wouldn't usually have it this high, but there we go. This came out in mid-2020, and the graphics inside, the best thing I can do is just look around very slowly and show you, but for me it's all top notch. Look at these textures up here on this rim here, this handle down here, this stuff down here. For me it's pretty much as good as it gets. Any thoughts about the interior graphics RC?
No, I'd agree with you. It is excellent looking.
Shadows cast beautifully. Textures, they will break up if you go right into them like that, but obviously you don't do that generally. Switches, very high mesh detail. I guess, you know, it's what you'd expect from a mid-2020 module at the end of the day. Gauges, top notch, don't even break up at all when you go into them. Gun sight. Textures on these pipes and stuff. Again, the writing doesn't really break up. Wondering why these jerk about, it's just my pedals aren't working properly. Even that little texture down there, look. And which plane did they model this on? I'm assuming the one in the collection that they have at Hangar 2 in Duxford. I'm assuming this would be modelled on that one.
100% sure that's where they got it from.
Yeah.
Since they have unfettered access to that.
Look down this right side. Hopefully you'll agree that's pretty much top notch. Back there,
Top notch, man.
armor plating, canopy that's really cool. Right, let's go and have a look outside. Outside, I'm really pleased. There are some of the modules that I think are 5 out of 5 on the outside in terms of rating, and this for me is one of them. How do I justify that? Well, my job is photographing virtual aircraft from the outside. So I know, after a while, which ones react beautifully with the sun in terms of their textures, in terms of their meshes, in terms of the other stuff that goes into 3D modelling. And this is a 5 out of 5 because I love taking pictures out of it. How do they get it like that? I don't know. Is it the fineness of the mesh? Is it the other, reflectivity of the mesh? I don't know what it is, but it is definitely 5 out of 5. Other 5 out of 5, for instance, Tomcat reflects the light absolutely beautifully. And this is on that scale of quality. Not necessarily just because it's a relatively new module. It's just well made. Again, we'll get as many. We'll take our time getting plenty of close-ups so you can have a good look around. Giant 2800 double Wasp, obviously. One of my favourite engines of all time. Well over 2,000 horsepower. Very little breakup of the texture, as you can see. There's well-made textures. Bit of a break up there on the writing, but again, you never actually zoom in this much. What makes it look so good? Again, I mean, I think it's the textures, RC. I think you can have a brilliant mesh maker with bad textures. It will always look terrible. Whereas you can make a relatively not so good mesh look amazing with the right textures. I think texturing is an art form in itself. Some guys amazing at it, some guys not so good. Great detail in here, as you can see. Don't worry about the jerky rudder, it's just my broken pedals. Massive trim tab on the rudder. Massive trim tab on the elevators as well. I enjoy just looking at the plane, to be honest. Okay, like I said, we're doing this for a long time now, and some just jump out as immediate 5 out of 5s, and this is always, since it came out, it's always been a 5 out of 5 for me. It catches the sun absolutely perfectly, loads of contrast, very bright textures, there's no dull, and some of the planes that have come out after this aren't as good. It just shows what can be done. Okay, we've got to give it a rating. For me, RC, I think 5 out of 5 outside, and to be honest, I think this is 5 out of 5 inside as well. It's not quite as good as an Mi-24 Hein, maybe not quite as good as a Tomcat inside, but it's good enough that it still just ticks a 5 for me. If you watch my other reviews, I don't give 5s out very often. But to me, it's just right. 5 inside, 5 outside.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5 on the inside. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 on the outside.
Everything we're talking about today is subjective, obviously. Different people see different things different ways. So, overall, 5 for me, 4.75. That is extremely high scoring in the visual department. Next, sound effects. We have a decent quantifiable way of rating these that we've picked up over the years. And we're going to look at engine sounds inside and outside of the vehicle, weapons, ground interaction, ground rumble, G-forces, angle of attack, services, and the overall mix. So, first, engine inside. And it's going to be easiest to do this in the air because we can get the engine revving up to maximum RPM. So, manifold pressure there, tacho there. Listen to this beautiful double wasp. A couple of flybys. Absolutely gorgeous. Next, weapons. We'll start with a beautiful 8 Browning half-inch machine guns, which sound pretty glorious. Look pretty glorious. Amazingly effective for air to ground and air to air. Next, rockets. Forgotten which ones I put on now, but finally bombs. So on, let's drop all 3. Bombs away. Let's head back to base. Next, I want to hear ground rumble when I'm running over the tarmac or the concrete. Now remember, a real pilot knows when he's interacting with the ground through his wheels because he can feel it in his butt. I can't do that, so I need to have that relayed to me via the sound engine. Let's see if we can hear any ground rumble. Clear as day. Easy. You heard that kind of sound that was going on. That was telling me that my wheels are interacting with the ground. So far it's going well. Next, services. I want to hear that the gear are going up, that they're clunking and locking into place. Is it realistic? I don't know. Again, a real pilot would feel that the big gear assemblies had come up and they were locking into place, and he would know through his bones that they were up or down. We don't have that, so we've got to be told by the sound engine that the gear are coming up. So, raising the gear. On a lovely clear thunk. I mean, that was too low in the mix by far for me. I wouldn't have heard that if my engine was up here, but there was at least a thunk that the gear are up, so that's better than nothing. Next, maneuvers. Any real pilot will tell you that he flies not by his instruments, not even by his sight, but by his backside. He feels what the plane is doing, he feels the G-forces, he feels the vibrations of the wings, and so on. I can't do that, so I'm going to need the sound engine to tell me that I'm pulling high G. I need the sound engine to tell me that I'm running high angle of attack and that the wings are struggling, the airfoil is struggling. Let's see how that's modelled. So, ooh. We're good. We're good. Let's go. You can see at the bottom, you'll be able to see the G. Okay, we've got some speed in the old gal. Now watch the G, watch the alpha, and let's listen. You can hear the G. The G is fine. Didn't hear any alpha. We'll go and try that again. I want to put it at a high angle of attack, and those wings are going to start struggling. They're going to start vibrating, as they would pretty much in all aircraft. And I want to hear something in the sound engine telling me that those wings are struggling. It's something a virtual pilot will need. So angle of attack down at the bottom, 1.4 degrees currently. There is nothing there. 20 degrees angle of attack here. That's the absolute maximum the plane can do, and it's pretty much departed already. What I should be hearing, and again, I don't know what it would sound like in a real plane, if anything, but as a virtual pilot, I have to be hearing at that point that the wings are struggling because, again, a real pilot feels this completely through his backside. I can't do that. I need to be told by the sound engine. That is a problem with the sound engine. And finally is the overall mix. Engine feels just about right for me. Again, I compare all the different engine volumes. Some of them are terrible. MiG-19, for instance. Mirage is a bit off. Some of them are perfect. F-16. And this engine sounds is just about right. Weapons, they're just about right for the engine sounds. Ground rumble is okay. G in the mix is fine. Alpha sounds, they're not there at all. Either they're not there or they're too quiet. Either way, that's an error. Services, to me, too quiet. I want a big thunking chunk. I want to hear that those gear have closed and locked as a virtual pilot. So it's not perfect in the mix. It's generally okay, but a few things are either just not there or not quite right in the mix based on the average module, shall we say. So RC, we have to give that a total rating of sound. The sounds that are there are good. The mix is 80% there. So I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5 for sounds inside, sounds outside. There is scope for improvement, as I've said, according to the metrics that we use. RC.
Yeah, I'm going to give it the same.
4 out of 5.
The same.
Super duper. Next, interactivity and detail. We're looking at what percentage of the cockpit instruments and controls we can interact with, and are the systems behind those modeled to what detail. We're not comparing it to other planes per se because, you know, it's only specific for this particular aircraft. For instance, a 1 would be like a Flaming Cliffs 3 plane, like an F-15, where very little is modelled and you cannot interact with the cockpit. A 5 would be like an A-10C that's been out for about 10 plus years and just about everything is modelled and the systems behind it are modelled. This, I was just talking to RC off camera, we're struggling to find anything that A, you can't interact with, and B, doesn't work. So let's try and find some things. In fact, let me just go through some cool examples. As you'll know, as a warbird pilot, this is not like flying a jet. You have to maintain the engine. The engine's constantly trying to blow itself up, and your job is to keep it from blowing itself up. So for instance, you'll be flying along and you will be changing your intercooler. You'll be flying along and you'll be changing your oil cooler. These are all modelled 3D and in terms of the systems behind them and the damage that they create if you mess it up, which I do all the time. Your cowl, you've got an air-cooled engine here, obviously. It's like a very big engine from a Beetle or something. You know, you've got your cowls up there. All this has got to be managed at different regimes, otherwise you're gonna damage your engine. Electricity supplies, hydraulic supplies can leak and fail. Oxygen supplies are modelled to a degree within reason what you'd want. The whole regime of the engine, all the different things we've got here, is all modelled. Navigation, the errors and whatnot that come from an E2B, the errors that come from using a directional gyro, all of this is modelled. I can't think of anything switch that I can press down here that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Let me know if you think I'm missing anything. Even the UV lights, I haven't got them turned on here, but you know, everything's going to work there. This guy is modelled. This guy is modelled. Maybe the only thing that doesn't work is maybe this, I think. Yep, secret self-destruct. If you want to go land in Germany, then you'll want to self-destruct your radio codes. I don't know whether it works or not, but I don't know. I can't really find anything to mark it down on RC. I can usually find something. I can usually say, oh, they haven't bothered modelling this, or they haven't bothered modelling that. Have you found anything?
No, it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tried all these circuit breakers down here, but knowing the guys that made this, I'd be amazed if they weren't. Compressibility flaps here. I hate to give more 5s out because I want to be stingy and I want to find problems, but I can't really find anything that doesn't work. Let me know if you find anything else. So I have to give it a 5 out of 5 in terms of interactivity and detail, I think, RC. Your input, please.
I will give it the same for the same reason.
Next, flight model, and this is where we really start to score high, I must say. This aircraft for me, and bearing in mind I'm not biased towards this aircraft. I mean, I like Jugs, but I don't like them as much as a Spitfire or a BF-109. Obviously I don't get anything from doing these reviews. If anything, people tell me not to make them, so you know, I've got no reason to particularly like this plane. But being completely honest with you, the flight model is, well, literally second to none. It flies absolutely beautifully. Now bear in mind, this is a realistic simulator. This is not a tight turning dogfighter. If you go and try and dogfight a Spitfire or a BF-109 or one of those really high-performing, low-flying dogfighters, you will get beaten unless you're really good, and they're not very good. This is a big, heavy attack plane. Soaks up lots of damage, really well built, and that damage that it sucks up, legendarily in real life, is modelled in DCS. You can literally unload a full Spitfire, B-Wing, Sparnos and 303s, and you can quite easily not knock one of these out. It really is well modelled. But back to the flight model. People who are really good in it probably can dogfight in it, especially up high. But for the average layman like me, like RC, I would not want to get in a dogfight in one of these with one of the faster aircraft, and we've proved that time and time again. In terms of flight model generally, I'm not necessarily looking for realism per se. Now, why is that? Well, because for Amigo Dynamics, we expect it to be almost perfectly realistic anyway. You know, there's precedent. What I'm really looking for here is how immersive the flight model is to an experienced virtual pilot. I'm a very experienced virtual pilot, so is RC. I'm not saying I'm particularly good, but I am very experienced, and I want the flight model to convince me that I am flying in an actual jug. I want to feel the weight of the aircraft, I want to feel the inertia of the aircraft, especially in a pronounced aircraft like this, big heavy aircraft. I should be feeling that all the time. Also, ground interactions, how does it react with the ground? Has it got a good high fidelity ground model? Will it skid and so on? So, let's go. One small caveat, I still haven't fixed my rudder pedals, so it's going to be a bit of a dodgy flight, but we'll be alright. How does she feel on the ground? She is relatively stable. She has a wide wheelbase, but it's a powerful engine and it will pull. So I'm going to have plenty of right rudder, as you can see. Sort of works. Here we go. Airborne, gear up. Step on the ball. Again, at this point, big, heavy plane. Now's a good chance. Low speeds. Low speeds, I want my wing to stall, just as the real aircraft would stall. I want to see it shaking. I want to hear some sounds that the aircraft is upset. Keep nice and slow. And let's upset the airflow, let's upset the wing. Put a bit of rudder in. Try not to crash. I want the flight model to tell me that it's struggling for lift, and already I can feel the bottom coming out of it. I can just feel it. I can feel it struggling. I feel the angle of attack. I can feel the shaking. And it's all coming to me at just the right time, so I can put the throttle when need to. I can put the nose down, you know, neutralize the rudder when needed. So plenty of feedback there. Just a shame about the lack of sound. That's the only thing that annoys me. The lack of aerodynamic sound in terms of what the wings are doing. Once we get faster, of course, the aircraft becomes much more stable. It is a very stable aircraft. Compare it to a Spitfire, compare it to a Mosquito that's come out recently, compare it to almost all of the other, well, not all of them, but about 50% of the warbirds. She is an absolute beautiful gun platform. Even me, with my terrible skills, can hit targets easily, mainly ground targets, because I prefer it as a ground attacker, but aerial targets as well. Simply because she is so stable, and that is why I pick her for ground targets. I never pick her for air-to-air, simply because, I mean, you're competing against such good planes. Some of them from 1944, 1945, BF-109, you know, Kurfürst. You're trying to go against a Dora at the end of the day, and this plane in a dogfight is just not really equipped to go against those kind of planes. So once we get some speed under the hood, and this is exactly how apparently it was in real life. Big, heavy, tough tank, stable gun platform. Let's just head into some high-speed maneuvers. So we're about 200 knots now, I guess. I want to feel when one of the wings drops lift. I feel it. Look at the shaking. The shaking is coming in progressively as the angle of attack rises. I'm at 15 degrees angle of attack. It's telling me again I want the sound, but I don't have the sound. But at least I've got the shaking. This is all feedback the virtual pilot needs. Push too much, and a wing's gone. And she's over. Although she can be unstable, obviously, when you put her past her limits like that, she always seems to right herself up, if you know what I mean. Some planes, like a Mustang, always tends to roll the other wing over and can be very deadly. This aircraft, luckily, always seems to turn right side up, and so it rarely results in a crash. No idea why, or if that's realistic. Regain stability, angle of attack down, gets the speed on, and she flies like an absolute dream. In summary, pretty much perfect ground interaction. You know, I don't fly real planes, but it's perfectly permissible. Low speed feels just right. I would want a bit more sound in there, but vibrations are good, and how she just drops the bottom out of her and how she recovers is fine. High speed, Beautiful stability, beautiful stability. Best warbird for stability, easily. Maybe along with a Dora, maybe even better. And high-speed maneuvering, losing a wing and whatnot. It tells you, at least by the vibrations, everything you've got to know. Again, sound would be nice. And by pure feel, which you'll just have to trust me on, really beautiful feeling flight model. Really don't want to seem biased, but I think I've got to give it a 5. The only problem I've got with it is I think it's missing some sound, but I think that's probably a sound problem. I don't think I can mark the flight model down. I think I've got to go for a 5. I apologise for that, but that's just how I feel about it. I'll see.
I'm going to go with a 4.5 because even though the flight model is good, you can't seem to make it fall apart, which you should be able to.
Right.
I mean, I've done some stuff in it that should have made the wing crack and nothing happened.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah. Which leads on to difficulty. 1, super easy. 5, super difficult. This is split into 2. 1, difficulty of the systems to learn. A10C, very difficult systems to learn. Lots of learning required. And 2, fly, to keep it in the air and to do a dogfight in it. How easy is it to do? Well, the first stipulation is you have to know how to fly a warbird. That is something you have to do. It's not like flying a jet. You will constantly be thinking, as well as flying, you'll be constantly managing your engine. In this case, you've got an oil cooler you have to think about. You've got an intercooler you have to think about. You've got cowl flaps you have to think about. You will modulate them depending on your flight regime, what you're doing with your engine instruments here to keep your engine in good condition, just as the real pilot would. If you don't do that, you're going to have a very boring, quick mission. As long as you know that, then it's probably, I would say, the easiest warbird to fly. It's easy to take off. It's easy to land. Lovely wide landing gear. Lovely big wings. It's a heavy plane, but it's also got a massive wing, so its wing loading shouldn't be, out of this world. When she's airborne, in terms of harsh manoeuvres, you can't dogfight like a Spitfire. A Spitfire, you can get in it, and you can be a 5-year-old and pull the stick fully back, and she'll stall and she'll recover fine. This aircraft, not so much. This is probably, in those terms, halfway between maybe a Spitfire and a Mustang. You've got to be careful, but she's not as dangerous as a Mustang, in which case you can get yourself in trouble very easily. So she is forgiving, and you will pull out of most problems. It can tumble or get into spins sometimes, but you really got to work it to do that. So I would say in the general regime, she's easy to fly and she's very stable. Also, navigation is, on all of these warbirds, very difficult. Most of the time you're using compass, stopwatch and map, which is incredibly difficult, requires lots of skill. But again, it's just something you have to know. So I would say systems, which are very, very, very easy to learn. Everything here is just a few switches. It's on. It's made to be easy, and there's very little learning to do, to be honest. In terms of flying, I would say probably 3. Generally, it is easy, it's comfortable, it's rewarding, but just be careful when you start doing harsh maneuvers. So I guess that means it's an average of 2.5 difficulty, slap bang in the middle for me, 2.5 RC.
I'm going to give it a 2. I think it's a little easier than the others.
Which leads to our summary. With all that, it's just a plane I've loved as soon as it came out. Again, I don't fly it massively because I like dogfighting, and I'm not a very good dogfighter in this, and I don't think it's a very good dogfighter generally, unless in certain situations. But when I do fly it, I find it absolutely wonderful. It looks, for me, one of the best out there, and outside, pretty much the best, along with the top-notch ones. Weapons are decent, for the time period that we're looking at here. We can do pretty much everything we need to do. Sound engine is, I would say, about 80% there, 85% there. Some bits missing, but what there is good, and the mix is generally pretty good. Interactivity in detail, pretty much perfect. I always miss something, but I can't think of something that doesn't work or isn't modelled well, so that's there. Flight model, again, right at the top for me with the big, really good flight models. To be honest, most of the warbirds have really good flight models, but this one, to me, is right at the top there. Difficulty, for me, slap bang in the middle, 2.5. Certainly not difficult, not super easy, as long as you know your stuff, but one of the, if not the easiest warbirds, at least. Is it worth money? Yeah, I paid my, whatever it was at the time, my $60 on discount or something, and I think it was well worth it. I think you get plenty of time out of it, and you can't do a million things with it, but for a warbird, I think it's pretty top notch. I guess that's my summary, RC. Anything you've got to add?
No, I just, other than it is a really good module, and I enjoy flying it.
Roger. Regards to scores, we'll put them up in the sheet that you'll find linked in the video description. We reserve the right to change them at any time because we are humans, we are subjective, and we might change our mind. The module might get better, it might get worse, you never know. And as well as that, I'll make sure the other Grim Reapers put their marks in so that it will be a less biased way of doing it. That is our review on the P-47D. Excellent plane, one of the ones I would genuinely recommend to go out and buy. I hope that was useful, and see you later.